Okay, first I'd like to thank the grace of heaven, the virtues of the masters, and the compassion and mercy of the grand predecessors, senior transmitters, lectures, temple masters, everyone for giving me this opportunity today to learn to talk about today's topic, which is the Tao Te Ching, Classic of the Way and the Virtue, chapter 76. Okay, chapter 76. It's a medium length chapter, okay? And the title or the theme of this chapter is soft or gentle and pliant or flexible, okay? Soft and gentle or soft and pliant or soft and flexible, okay? Gentle and flexible. All right, so it's divided into 3 sections. It's only 10 phrases long, okay? So basically, the first section, Lao Tzu, the first 4 phrases, first section, Lao Tzu he's using the metaphor of the physical quality of being soft and flexible, okay, versus being hard and rigid, okay, or stiff, okay, to describe, the difference between what's living and what's dead, okay, living things, right? Living things are soft, okay, all right. So he's using that as a metaphor, okay, all right. And then the second section, basically, he's using the metaphor of soft and yielding as flower of life, and versus the hard and the unbending as follower of death. Okay, so he's giving, and this references to a previous chapter we talked about that. Okay, so it's not just the physical aspect, right? He's using that as a metaphor, okay, for something. And then the conclusion, all right, which is basically why being soft, he's making the case why being soft and flexible is aligned with life, and therefore it occupies a higher place, versus being big, forceful, and unbending, and that's the follower of death, as aligned with death, and why it's therefore it occupies a lower position. Okay, all right. So that's a nice short chapter. All right, so let's go to the outline. Okay, here it is. All right, so the first sentence in the first section is, when alive, the body or the person is soft or tender and pliant or flexible. In its death, it is hard and rigid or stiff, right? Okay, so what is, okay, so this phrase here, okay, which we translate as this, okay, soft and pliant or tender and flexible, right? It connotes it connotes a positive quality, okay, even though physically he's using this these are physical qualities, right? He's using these physical qualities, but it's not just physical, it's actually a positive quality, which we will see, okay? It's beyond physical. All right, okay, so now let's talk using physical as a metaphor first. Is that, what he's saying is pretty obvious, right? When a person is alive, its body is soft and flexible, right? That's pretty obvious, okay, kind of obvious fact. But what this first phrase is referring to is that being the body when you're alive is tender or not to the touch. That's when you feel it, right? When you use your sense of touch to feel a body, the person, when they're still alive, they're not tough, they're not rough, right? They're not stiff, right? And physically limber, that means they're flexible while they're still alive, right? That's right, okay? But it has a more metaphorical side to it, which is that's the non-physical side. That is, he's also referring to your mind, okay, besides the physical part. He's talking about the mind, the mental side, that when you're alive, or that what he's called, not when you're alive, but he called that being alive if your mind has this has this quality, okay, comparable to being soft and gentle and pliant and flexible, okay? It's that when a person's mind is gentle or soft, flexible, that's pliant, supple, yielding, etc., right? Then their mind is like a living body that's being alive, okay? Because they are capable. Why? Because they're capable of seeing and tolerating other possibilities, ideas, opinions, views, etc., you see? So that's why he's using that physical side to say, of soft and or gentle and flexible and pliant, right? Referring to your mind, to the mind. Okay. And so if your mind has those type of qualities, then that's like being alive. Okay. All right. Okay. So whereas on the other hand, okay, what is rigid or tough cannot last long, but the supple can last longer, right? The rigid and the, what's hard, because as we know, right, in chapter 41, the softest, chapter 40, not chapter 40, sorry, chapter, the softest, I think it's called the softest. I think it's chapter, oh geez, I had it written down someplace. Okay, chapter 43, sorry, the softest, right? We talked about that, right? Where the hardest rocks, right, can be eroded by water, wind, etc. Right? Okay, so that's, now I'm talking about another chapter. There is something called the soft overcomes the tough. That's from the 10th phrase of chapter 36, also something like that, right? So that's why the tough does not last long, okay? Does not endure forever. So therefore, the tough, something that's tough and hard is, like death, okay? All right. So now let's do the second half, which is talking about the death that is hard and rigid, right? Okay, so now this phrase, once again, the second half right here, okay, this phrase, which we translated as hard and rigid or stiff or inflexible, you can say. Actually, this word means strong, but that's okay, it's here, okay? This phrase literally means strong, okay? Okay, which most of us equate with, that's a physical, that's a good quality, that's a positive quality, right? You're vigorous, you're energetic, all right? Okay, it includes a lot of things, okay? But it also could be, in this context, it means headstrong, inflexible, rigid, stiff, unbending, okay? Which could be also negative, right? So now, so specifically in the ancient context, it means being forceful, headstrong, willful, coming out too strong. Get it? More on the excessive forcefulness. So that's a negative quality. Okay. So therefore, the meaning of 坚强 in the ancient context means you're inflexible, unyielding, being very tough, unyieldingly tough, in the mind. That's the key. Okay. A rigidness that cuts off possibility. So that's a negative quality. Whereas in the modern context, we often hear take it as a connotation of being resolute or having strength, which is a positive quality. Now, so in modern usage, this phrase connotes it's more positive than negative, whereas in ancient context, it's more negative. All right. Okay. So on the basic meaning of the second phrase is that, okay, we all know that when a person passes away, right, their body stiffens up, becomes inflexible, not pliant. So this phrase is describing what? Rigor mortis. We know that, right? That's a physical reality, right? Rigor mortis, because your joints will stiffen up because there's no longer getting the nutrients, the blood flow stop, right, etc. Your nerves are, they're not dead, but they're not responsive, right? So, okay, so, all right, okay. So the nervous system, stops, okay, does not work. All right, so this is to make the point that, like rigor mortis, that's what this Chinese phrase line means. The lack of flexibility is associated with death, right? That's what they call it, stiff, right? Stiff, stiff and rigid, the physical body. But it's more than that. Lao Tzu is not referring to the obvious, the physical side. He's talking about the non-physical, which is about our mind specifically. When a person's mind is inflexible, rigid, stiff, and unyielding, then their mind is like a dead body. That's the death, because they are incapable of seeing or tolerating other possibilities, ideas, opinions, views, etc. Get it? So they have an inflexible mind, very rigid, very stubborn, you can say, right? Stubborn mind, etc. All right. Okay. So that's why it's not a positive quality to be stiff and unbending or rigid. All right. Or okay, inflexible. All right. So this is also similar. We saw that in previous chapters, that the strong only lasts for a very short time, but the weak lasts for a longer time, because suppleness can overcome hardness. That's in chapter 36. Once again, the 11th phrase, the next phrase that follows, that the weak overcomes the strong. All right. Okay. So there's a deeper understanding of what soft, what we translate as soft or tender and pliant or flexible. It means this. It just means that on a very broad metaphor, it's just a metaphor for our spiritual mind. Okay, it's not rigid. It's very flexible, very soft. You can say, okay, I mean, that's how we describe it's very broad. You can say, okay, all right, or magnanimous, etc., etc. Specific just means it's a metaphor for the benevolent, compassionate, merciful, kind, loving, gentle, tender, harmonious, peaceful mind. That's all the specific qualities. Okay. Now, then for what we translated the phrase as hard and rigid or stiff or inflexible. On a very broad level, it's a metaphor for just a non-spiritual mind. That's a very egocentric mind, right? A very selfish mind, a very stubborn mind, okay, etc. Specifically, it's a metaphor for any, a mind devoid of compassion or mercy, okay? It's cold-hearted, being non-benevolent, non-understanding, okay, non-compassionate, merciless, okay, non-empathetic, unsympathetic, etc., etc. All right, okay, all right. So that's the higher level. Okay, so on the physical side, the default assumption is that being alive, right, or having life is good, right? While being dead is bad, right? That's the kind of message we get from this first sentence or first line, is that first two phrases, because the first phrase just depicts a positive quality, that is, you're alive, you're living, while the second phrase depicts a negative quality, that's being dead. Now, why is being alive a positive thing then, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious. I don't know. Because and why? From Laozi's perspective, okay, in this case, why being alive is a positive thing? I thought, if we come to this physical world, we suffer, right? Isn't that what life is all about? It's suffering, right? It's dukkha. Laozi's not looking at it from that perspective. Now he's talking about as humans, being with humans. Okay, he's not talking it from a philosophical or you can say metaphysical perspective in this case. Okay, in this chapter. All right. Okay. So because why is being alive is a positive thing rather than being dead, which is a negative thing. It's because while you're alive, you still have possibilities and opportunities to do things, right? One can make changes happen, improve things, and make progress, achieve, etc. Right? Okay. So if things are not good, you can make it better. This is possible only when you are alive, right? When you're dead, you can't do anything, right? Okay. So while with death, there are no more opportunities to make changes, improvements, etc. This is why death is negative. So Buddha, before he became fully enlightened, before he became a Buddha, right? I'll bet being alive is a positive thing for him. Why? Because after all, it's only being alive that he's able to attain enlightenment. While being dead, he can't attain enlightenment, right? So that's why. Okay, so that's what Lao Tzu is trying to get at. Now, yes, when Buddha became enlightened, he said, yeah, he realized the Four Noble Truths, right? Right? That life is suffering, right? Right? But then at the very end, the fourth truth is that, but there's a way to get out of that suffering, right? To seize that suffering and, to reach, to transcend samsara, the cycle of birth and death and rebirth, right? But the only way to do that is because you have to be alive in order to do that, right? Okay, so that's what Lao Tzu is trying to get at, okay, at that point. All right, so the key point on a non-physical side is that while the mind is gentle or soft and flexible or pliant, it's alive because it will allow one to accept and tolerate different ideas, opinions, possibilities, etc. So that's positive. While a mind that is unyielding, you can say stubborn, right, hard and rigid, or not compassionate, etc., right? Okay, it's like death because it will not allow one to accept and tolerate different ideas, opinions, or improve, make progress, etc., whatever. Okay, so now throughout we have to be careful. We have to have this, look at these because there are different perspectives. Okay, different levels of now throughout this classic. being alive is always a positive context, while death is always a negative. That's the reason why, okay? Why throughout the classic, if you read all 81 chapters, he'll always, Lao Tzu will always point out that being alive is a good thing, okay? Yes, we have our, you can say we have our weaknesses of being alive, but that's still a good thing. All right, because you can there's always a possibility that you can improve, make progress, et cetera, et cetera. All right, okay. So now, so whereas the thing is, some people over philosoph. Well, they learn a little bit of philosophy, they read some bit of philosophy, and then they this idea, this notion, then sticks in their mind. They're saying, hey, who's to say being alive is good? Because you look around the world, right? Some people, when they're born into this world, my God, it's like hell for them, right? It's like, they're suffering through, God, unimaginable, pain, suffering, grief, et cetera, okay? Yeah, that's true, okay? So, so some philosophers, if you read some philosophy, they would say, hey, they would ask, are these people, being born to these circumstances, aren't they better off dead, so better not to be alive in the first place? Now, see, that's where, okay, now that the notion that being alive and death are really relative, and it all depends on certain conditions. So now that's what some of these philosophers would think, would bring out these, okay. Now, that's not the view of the Lao Tzu or the Tao. Why? Because the debate over whether being alive versus dead makes us more confused, and it gets up no closer to the meaning or essence of life, okay? So we shouldn't debate whether being alive or dead is better off. One is better than the other, okay? It's because there's karma, right? So therefore, some people, when they're born into this world, they carry heavy karma from previous lives, and then they suffer in this lifetime. Okay, but that doesn't mean that being alive in itself is a bad thing, right? Okay, so that's what Lao Tzu wants to try to get at, okay? Now, you can say, oh, well, I don't want to be alive or dead because either one are not, I don't want, because I don't want to go through this cycle of birth and death and rebirth all over again. That's different perspective. That's the ideal, which is, yes, that's at the absolute level. That's what we call absolute or total complete enlightenment, right? That's fine. That's good. But if you have to choose between alive and dead, if you have to choose between the two, just the two, not to transcend, not neither, it's just two. Obviously, being alive is better. So Lao Tzu is approaching at this level, at that level, okay? Not from Buddha's perspective saying, oh yeah, you can transcend birth and death. Lao Tzu's not talking about that here, okay? All right? Okay, so just understand that. Okay, so let's talk about part one. Okay, oops. Okay, what is this? There's some ideas here, all right? Three ideas, okay? So we should be ready for the future. That means, okay, besides being, physically soft, flexible, right? Lao Tzu's not talking about that, okay? He's talking about in the mind, okay? In the mind, basically that we have to be flexible and adaptable when we are alive, when we're living, okay? Now, because there are, question to ask is, and you've seen this, okay? There are massive changes and also accelerating changes. That's the problem with this, with modern society, not the problem, but that's, excuse me, a quality, an attribute of the modern society, right? Especially in the sciences or technological, or even using culture, okay, technological and cultural change are happening at a very rapid pace, right? Okay, right? A lot of businesses that were around just maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago are no longer around today because of the fast technological change. For example, all of us have one thing in our pockets or in our handbags or whatever, okay? And that's the cell phone, right? Okay, and what does the cell phone have nowadays? They probably have a camera, right? So think about it. 20 years ago, camera, 35 millimeter camera, okay, those cameras that you could carry around, all right, okay, using film, right? Like Kodak film or Fuji film or whatever. I'm not saying they no longer exist. Some professionals still use them, but by and large, they're gone. They're gone. Kodak is, I think we're bankrupt now. I mean, has no longer exist or whatever, right? And yet Kodak was dominant, for the last 100+ years or so when photography first, came into existence, right? So we've seen change. So you have to be adaptable, all right, and flexible, all right, to adapt, okay, to the changing situations, environments. Now that's the physical external side. I'm talking about, businesses, but I'm talking about at an internal level on the non-physical side. We have to be ready. Last, also, the second part is now the soft also implies gentleness, okay, or you should say, you have compassion, empathy, understanding, all that, okay, into our interactions when we are dealing with, in our with other people, in our dealings with other people, within our family, within our friends, with our coworkers, society, etc., community, etc. Okay, we have to have that element of gentleness, empathy, etc. Okay, in our so now we have to be careful, be mindful that sometimes we can become stubborn. We become fixated on whatever, on some kind of, I don't know, some kind of view or some kind of idea, etc., or mindset. Okay, all right. So we are very stubborn. Sometimes we can be very stubborn, or sometimes we could be very unbending. Right? Says, hey, that's the principle, the law. It's inflexible. Blah blah blah. Right? All that stuff. Or we are very impatient. We cut people off. Okay. All right. Okay. So we got to be careful. Okay. Now these qualities, stubbornness and bending or impatience, are really qualities of death. Okay. All right. In the metaphorical sense, right? So all right. Third is what is, I said, reduce our footprint in the world. That's, you can say, our impact, impact in the world. That's basically what I'm saying is a lifestyle of simplicity. The simpler, the better. Okay, when we are living. Okay, the simpler. Don't make it too complex. Okay, I think in previous chapters we talked about it, and also I think we'll talk a little bit about. I'm not saying it's complexity, but just means that more clutter, more things to do, okay, to manage, just more complex. And I think chapter 77, we'll talk a little bit about that. But previous chapter we talk about, right, how being simple is better, right, living the simple life. Okay, so the idea is to minimize the clutter in your life, okay, having more simplicity and less complexity. Also, that means in our minds, okay, not just the physical aspect, but also the non-physical, the mental aspect, okay. Don't think too much, right? Don't overthink. Then you get more confused, right, or more lost, etc., etc. Okay, that's not a good quality. Okay, all right. Less baggage means you can be light on your feet, right? You can be more mentally adroit. Okay, adroit, adroit. That means nimble, right, flexible, etc. Or you can act or react much faster to changing situations. You have a very flexible mind, right? Very agile mind. Okay. Now that's different. Okay. Now, so there are two parts here. One is, is not to knowledge. Okay. Just, that means it doesn't mean more simplicity and less complexity. It doesn't mean that you don't know anything, that you're simple-minded. Doesn't mean that. Okay. It doesn't mean that you should know nothing. Okay. It doesn't mean that either. All right. Okay. Okay. The key is with what you know, how flexible can you be? Okay, so that's the key. All right, okay, so let's go back. All right, okay, oops. Okay, summary part 1. Okay, all right, so now let's go to section 2. All right, so all living things, grass and, shoot. Okay, where am I? Okay. All living things, grass and trees, when alive, are soft or tender and flexible or supple. At their death, become dry and brittle or withered. Okay, so he's using it again, another physical qualities to as a metaphor for something. All right. Okay, so as a metaphor for. Okay, so the basic meaning is that physically, right, all living things like human beings. Okay, so now he's expanding that He expanding that principle, all right, of of that quality of being soft and flexible, right? Okay, to all things. Now, not just humans, right? Not just the human body, to human thing, to human beings, but to all animals and plants. They exhibit, they display qualities of being soft and flexible while they're still alive, right? For all animals and plants, right? Okay, so now, but you say, oh yeah, no, but I know some animals, they have hard exteriors, right? They have, they have body armor, etc., right? Or look at the trees, these giant, big, large trees, they have a very tough bark, tough, which is true. Okay. Now, while some animals have protective armor or hide, and trees have a tough bark for self-protection, but you do not need to look very hard to find their softness. What is their softness? Well, for animals with hard exteriors, that's exoskeleton, they have like body armor or shells, like turtles, right? Or a lot of these insects, right? Beetles, what do you call that? What's that? The giant beetle, that black beetle, whatever they have, that black, they have, they have a tough armor, right? They have a tough shell, okay? But they are soft and supple inside, right? They're soft and flexible inside, all right? Otherwise, they can't move, right? So, okay, all right. Or they can't live, okay? So, while trees with tough barks, right? But they have soft flowers and leaves and flexible branches, right? Okay, so they're not, okay, so when they're alive, okay, when they're living, when with trees and these. So as long as one's a living thing, being soft and flexible is aligned with being alive, with life itself, okay, all right, okay. Now the second phrase is, when they die, when living things, right, when all living things die, they become dry and brittle or withered, okay? So that what it means is that this phrase adds to the previous description, that's the first line, the first sentence, the second phrase, or the first sentence, which is that of being unyielding and inflexible. Okay, so that's the, he's just basically applying, right? When things die, when living things die, be it animals or plants, right? They become hard and brittle, right? So now he's also describing the non-physical side, okay, which is that if one is inflexible, unwilling to yield, then one is afflicted with a condition called the death of the mind or death of the mindset. All right, okay. So he's using the physical quality of stiff, unbending, and that's the like being dead. Now he's applying that to our mindset. Okay, so the quality of death, this just does not mean inflexibility though, or lack of suppleness or toughness. It also implies other qualities such as drying out, withering, and brittleness, right? Fragility. These are the qualities of being easy to break. Okay, so on the physical side, right? When you say, yeah, look at dead plants, right? The branches become very stiff, right? So you can snap them, you can break, and also they dry out, they're withered, right? So those are two physical qualities. But think of it as a metaphor that Laos is using to apply to their mind. If our mind is like being dead, that is very, inflexible, rigid, stubborn, all that stuff. It's also, that means it's dried out, it's withered, it's brittle, it's fragile. So people who have dogma, for example, that's very rigid, right? A dogma is very rigid, right? Something that's unyielding, right? Unbending. Those people, their mindset, they are very withered and brittle or fragile because it is very easy to find a contradiction in that dogma. Okay, all right, so that's okay. So additional meaning is that for all living things, when they die, they eventually become very dry, they wither, they lose moisture, so they become brittle, very fragile, and very easy to break. All right, so the key is that balance. What Lao Tzu wants to get at is that balance and moderation are crucial in living this Tao. You have to be very mindful to be flexible. You have to be mindful to be flexible. You can't be rigid, right? You can't be unbending, unyielding in your mindset, in your thinking, but also not a pushover. But very mindful to be flexible, but not a pushover. That means you have no opinions whatsoever. Whatever, somebody says this, you agree. anything. Okay, so that's also not good either. That's overdoing it. That's extreme. Chapter 76, 77, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you want to be aligned with life. So you want to manifest flexibility and suppleness, right? But also manage so as not to be excessively flexible or soft, where you have no ideas, no opinions, no views of your own. Okay, so that's all right. Okay, so remember, these are the two extremes. One is being a very rigid mind, like you're very dogmatic mind, very stubborn mind, right? Okay, that's one extreme, right? You're very rigid, very unyielding, very strong, you can say, very unbending. Okay, that's one extreme. The other extreme is you have none, no ideas, no opinions, no views, no nothing. Okay, no beliefs. Then those are the two extremes, right? Lao Tzu is saying neither one is good. Okay, because in life that's not how it works. Okay, that is not one or the other. Okay, not that black and white. All right. Okay, so we have to be very mindful of that. That's what Lao Tzu wants to get at. All right. Okay, so the implication at the universal level is that softness and gentleness are more of a quality. Okay, I should say it's a non-physical quality. Okay, but they are the essential qualities of life, while flexibility and suppleness point to the dynamism of life. Okay, so that's the physical side, but also non-physical, because it allows for growth, motion, and movements. That's the physical side when you have life, and when you're living. But it's not just the quality of softness that you have. You have choices. You have the freedom of movement. You have the ability to do as you please, to go to different places, to do different things, etc. All right. Okay. So that's the beyond the physical side. All right. Okay. So you have choices. Okay. Your mind can have different choices, right? Okay. So different ideas, different perspectives, different views, opinions, etc., etc. All right. Okay. Whereas in death, you do not have these possibilities, right? When you are aligned with death, it's not just being inflexible or having, rigor mortis, stiffness, right? Being cut off from all possibilities. It is also being aligned with being very fragile and withered, right? An example is dogma, which, like dead plants, is often dry and brittle. Someone who's zealous and completely inflexible is like a dry and brittle or fragile dead plant. When one is dogmatic and inflexible, it is very easy to find something that will contradict their beliefs or tie them up in knots. Okay. Okay. So a key point is that okay, let's do it in half. Softness and suppleness imply a range of other possibilities. While living, a plant will grow toward a light source, that's the sun. Being soft and supple, the plant has the flexibility to grow out to an area that has not been before, to get closer to a light source, for a source of light, for example. That's the physical side. On the non-physical side, if someone has a fragile ego or an arrogant person with an ego, it is very easy to offend this person. This person will easily feel insulted. That's the mindset that is closely associated with death rather than life, right? That's being withered, dry, very brittle, okay, very fragile. Okay, so the idea is to make sure we do not mix up the stiffness of death, that's a negative quality, with the toughness and durability or stamina, that's a positive quality. Don't confuse the two. Don't equate saying, being rigid, inflexible, unyielding is being tough and durable or having stamina. They do have overlap, but don't confuse the two. All right. Okay. You have to have stamina, right? You have to be durable, right? In life, right? Because we have to persevere. We have to persevere, right? Okay. But that's different than being stiff and inflexible. Okay. Okay. So because we need that, we need the toughness, durability, stamina, perseverance in order to weather life's storms, right? Right? We have to, right? The ups and downs, right? Especially the downs, right? Okay. But the stiffness of death is also accompanied by the fragile brittleness of death, whereas the toughness and durability of being alive means not easy to break, right? Being durable, being flexible. You want to be yielding and still champion the right course of action, right? You want to be yielding, okay, that's good, right? You have to be magnanimous, be tolerant, but you still have to know what is the right course, all right? Okay, so it's a balance, okay, between that. So the key is to be flexible and mindful of not being too flexible, all right? The key is You have to be flexible, but yet mindful of not being too flexible. Okay, all right, where you have no ideas, no concept, no nothing, basically. Okay, all right, okay, no opinion, whatever. Okay, so balance and moderation are the keys. Now, others may see you as weak. Oh, if you're being moderate, tolerant, etc. They may see, you're weak. You're not strong. You're not standing up to, whatever. Okay, to a particular view or whatever. But underneath the appearance of weakness is actually true strength or massive strength. Okay, so what's the best image that I can try to get you to see this? Is that imagine the image of a soft and fragile grass blades growing from the cracks of hard and rigid concrete pavement. We all see that, right? I see that on sidewalks all the time, right? Okay, so, right, concrete is very hard, right? Very rigid, very unyielding, very strong, right? We say that's what good qualities, right? But guess what? They'll crack, they'll break, right? They'll crack, they'll break. And guess what? When they break, what comes out of there? Some soft, tender, fragile blades of grass growing out there, right? Okay, so that's the thing. That's what we have to be thinking about. Okay, now let's talk about the second phrase, second section, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna get to it now. Okay, thus that which is hard and stiff or unbending is the follower of death. That which is soft, gentle, and unyielding is the follower of life. Okay, so what he's saying is that this is talking about more about internal now. Okay, is that those who are hard and unbending is aligned with death. That's the follower of death. Okay, means being unreasonably stubborn, okay, unyielding, unbending, such as those who cannot see perspectives other than their own. It's my way or the highway, for example. This is a common manifestation of what? Being hard and unbending. That's a negative quality, all right? Okay, so those who know they are wrong but refuse to admit it, right? They may even double down. That's another manifestation of hard and unbending. That's another bad quality, okay? All right. Those who lack the ability to consider alternative or unconventional solutions, that's also another manifestation of hard and unbending, okay? So these manifestations, those who are unable to not have the flexibility to change with the times, that's aligned with the death. That's called follower of death, all right? So we have to be mindful that these are all negative qualities, okay? All right. All right. Now, the second phrase, right, which is saying that, whereas those who are soft and yielding are the follower of life, it's that on the internal aspect is that those minds that have the ability to yield to reality is aligned with life. That's a positive quality, okay? So it just means that those minds who have the ability to recognize changing situations or obstacles in one's way and then change paths to avoid the obstacles, right? That's being flexible, right? That's being able to think, you can say unconventionally, right, etc. Okay, all right, adaptable, etc. Okay, so the ability of one's mind to recognize something that is, for example, changes in reality, obstacles, etc. When there is compelling evidence contrary to one's preconception, that's what it means. Okay, that you are able to see something that changes. That when there's compelling evidence that is contrary to my preconceptions. Okay, that kind of breaks your preconceptions, okay? Then someone who will base their belief on reality, that's someone who's like that, who's able to change their views, based on new and compelling evidence, okay? So that means this way you are able to learn new things, right? To be able to, change direction when the situation requires it, et cetera, all right? Okay, all right, okay, so that's the ability to let go of old ideas in order to learn something new. A mind that is able to relinquish old ideas in order to absorb new ideas, right? Remember the story of the arrogant young man and the old sage pouring tea into a cup, right? Okay. Now, on the external side, all living things, include humans, need to be flexible to be able to adapt to the changing environment in order to survive. This is being aligned with death. Whereas those who are inflexible and unbending do not have the ability to adapt to the changing environment will perish. Now, this is being aligned with death. Now, to be a follower of death does not mean, one, to worship a death deity or the personification of death. That's not what Lao Tzu meant by follower or disciple of death, okay? Or two, to be a death cult, to be in a death cult, or to kill oneself. That is, suicide pact, or to kill others, okay? To commit homicide. That's not what followers of death or disciples of death mean. Okay, so just understand that. Okay, all right. So the key point on the external side is that okay, right here. Okay, so the follower of death has nothing to do with the following a death deity or death cult. What it does mean is being eliminated, becoming extinct, following death into oblivion simply because one cannot adapt to change. For example, the process of evolution, also known as survival of the fittest, right? This warning is especially relevant to us today because we live in a world of accelerating change. For example, the advent of fast technological change in society. We have to, especially, for businesses, I mean, okay, besides at the personal level, they have to adapt to new technologies, right? New, et cetera, right? New advancements. So whatever. So they have to adapt or they don't survive, right? Like, there are many examples. I mean, like, look at, just think about it. When Amazon started out, right? They were an online bookstore, right? They sell books originally, okay? Now they adapted to the changing environment. They start to say, hey, we can do everything, virtually through the internet, not just selling books, but selling everything else from A to Z, right? A to Z. You can literally buy anything on Amazon from A to Z online, right? You don't need to go to a brick and mortar shop. Same thing with, let's think about the iconic bookstores that we used to have, right? No, Barnes and Nobles, or what's the other one? Oh, geez, I forgot the name of it. But anyway, okay. Guess what? 20, 30 years ago, they were doing well. But then guess what? Of the advent, right, of new technologies, now these bookstores are becoming obsolete. So now even Barnes and Noble offer what they call ebooks now, instead of books printed in paper, right? Hardcover, softcover, whatever. It's now ebook, right? And now not only it's not physical anymore, it becomes virtual. You just download it, right, into your Kindle, etc., whatever, okay, ebook reader, or even iPad, etc. Okay, all right. So that's the idea. Okay, now the follower of life is someone. Okay, is someone who is not eliminated by change, someone who can adapt and survive changes. Also, someone who can take advantage of changing conditions, who can thrive under changing conditions. All right, so that's the physical side. On the internal side, it just means a mind. Okay, a mind that is soft and yielding means the ability to anticipate change, being ready for it, and make adjustments in order to thrive. All of this starts with the realization that every phenomena is impermanent and constantly changing. And this requires a mind that is soft or gentle and yielding, which is aligned with death, instead of a mind that is hard and unbending, which is aligned with death. Okay, all right, so let's go to the third section. Therefore, an inflexible army will not win. An unbending or strong tree will be cut down. Now he's now extrapolating, extending this concept, right, to talking about the military. That's interesting. Army. Okay, so what he's saying, actually, it's all a metaphor. Okay, all right. So, okay, the army is a metaphor. Okay, the military that is so powerful or strong only relies on that strength to overcome its enemies to achieve its military objectives, instead of the intelligent use of strength, will not be victorious in war, right? That's what this line says, this first phrase, okay? Therefore, okay, so he's using that as a metaphor. He's applying the principle to the military, but also using that as a metaphor, okay? So normally, right, one would expect that a strong military force is more likely to be victorious in battle, right? Generally, a strong, that's what we say, right? Look at sports, right? A strong team is going to win over the weaker team, right? That's the general conventional wisdom, right? Here, though, Lao Tzu is not saying that. Okay, what it means is that a strong military, due to its superior strength, has too much aggression, using too much force, applying excess brute strength. That's what's an inflexible, strong military. That's what he's mean. Okay, that's not that. Okay, so he's being a little bit more specific. Lao Tzu, when he says a strong military or strong army, he's talking about a military army that has too much aggression, that's being too aggressive, that always use too much force, excessive force. Okay, excess brute strength. Okay, now because this inflexible military is so powerful and strong that it becomes complacent. Okay, that's why Lao Tzu saying that even though you may be strong, mighty, but because you only rely on that brute strength, that excess force, right? Then you become complacent, careless, and ineffective in its use of its might in order to achieve objective. Okay, and that's where the weakness comes in. Okay, or the negative qualities. Okay, now why is that? Okay, why is that? Because when a military is so powerful, it will become what? Arrogant. It will feel that, hey, I'm invincible. Yeah, nobody can beat me. Okay, nobody can defeat me. Okay, therefore it becomes overconfident and then becomes inflexible in the use of its brute strength. Okay, so it will not win the war in the end. Okay, right? Remember we came across that statement, chapter 69, just a few weeks ago. Okay, I think last 2 months, right? The side that is compassionate should win. Okay. All right. So basically the second phrase. So the second phrase is that what? That an unbending or strong tree, okay, will be cut down. What does that mean? Okay. Now this word has an archaic use. Okay. I mean, in a modern use, it just means this. Okay. Altogether being in common. Actually, in ancient use, it's a wood that's used for an arch door or a building. Okay. All right. It's an architecture. Okay. That's what it means. It's just, so what he's saying is that a very strong tree, when we say strong, I mean, that's, it doesn't make sense. Strong. We just means a very unbending tree, a tree that's tall and very, has very tough wood, right? Okay. That makes it for great lumber to be used for, for the door or a building. Okay. So now, so what the basic meaning here is that when applied to a tree, strong, that's what literally the Chinese word means, strong here, means the tree grows so strong that it's very tough and unyielding. Okay, very tough wood, tough lumber. What now? These are, we say, yeah, these are very positive qualities. What positive? Why? Because that makes the tree's wood excellent lumber. Lumber. It makes for good lumber for building, for a ship, etc. All right, or for a door. Okay, so the tree gets cut down for use, right? So therefore, the tree is very strong, very tall, very straight, strong, tall, whatever. Yeah, but it's going to get cut down. Right? So the strong tree, will follow death. Okay, will likely die. Okay, so just like the powerful military gets cut down due to its arrogance, complacency, and inflexible, the strong and unbending or inflexible tree also gets cut down for its hard wood because it makes for good timber, right? Good lumber, right? Okay, so in life, a strong tree being cut down is a metaphor, though. Okay, now Lao Tzu is using a metaphor for those who are inflexible, ending up on the chopping block. That's they become what? I'm gonna say extinct, right? They are aligned with death. That is, they are being followers of death who will perish. They'll be eliminated by change. Okay, so now on a more general level is that those who are inflexible in their actions and within their minds, so that's external, internal, will not survive change, but can still be useful as historical lessons of interest, right? Okay. All right. They have their use, they have their use that they'll teach us a lesson. Okay. All right. Okay. So a headstrong military is an inflexible military, which only knows using overwhelming force to achieve its objectives will not win the war in the long run. Rather than follow a strategy, its tendency is to charge forward and roll over and crush the enemy, right? That's what a strong, mighty army does, right? Like using a sledgehammer to crush an ant, right? We use overwhelming force, etc., right? Now, this inflexibility also applies to life, where those who are inflexible and unbending end up like the followers of death. They will perish because they're not able to adapt to different situations or lack the ability to have a soft or gentle and yielding mind. Okay, so for an unflexible, okay, for an inflexible and unbending person who's like a powerful military that relies only on brute force, that's inflexible army, to eliminate its enemies or to solve problems, will not be victorious in the end, because this over reliance on brute strength makes it more likely to charge into a trap. Right now, history is full of such examples. You read the stories, the stories of the different battles and strategies in the Three Kingdom era, right? The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. You guys can read about that. It's full of that, right? It's full of that. Okay. So now The metaphor of a strong unbending tree does not mean being durable like strong timber or strong lumber. That's a positive quality, right? That's why we use it, right? For floors, for the buildings, etc. But about those who are stubborn, unyielding, inflexible, unable, or unwilling to adapt or change. That's a negative. Okay, so don't confuse the two again, right? The two qualities. All right. Okay, so now let's go to the conclusion. Oh, we are in the conclusion. Sorry, the second half. Okay, the conclusion is that. Okay, the big and forceful occupy a lowly position, while the soft or gentle and pliant or flexible occupy a higher position, okay, or place. All right. Okay, so the basic meaning is that on the external side, contrary to common conception, it's not always a good idea to be big and powerful. Yeah, okay. It's not always a good idea, okay, to be big and powerful. Some examples: a large vehicle such as a bus, a truck, or a ship, or a train, okay, in motion takes much longer to stop because it has more momentum due to its larger mass, right? So a huge cruise ship or super tanker cannot turn on a dime due to its enormous size. A super aircraft carrier, right, although very capable, right, well-armed and well-protected and mighty, itself is a big target. Okay, a change happens slowly in a large corporation organization due to more layers of management bureaucracy, right? So these are all the disadvantages of being big and powerful and mighty, all right? So it's slow. That means everything comes slowly, more slowly, or you become a bigger target, et cetera, all right? Okay, all right, okay. So being big and powerful can blind you to the need for agility, flexibility, or perceptive to changing conditions in the first place. So we have to be mindful of that, okay? If you become big and mighty, okay, and powerful, then because you then tend to over rely on that, just that brute strength, right? And so therefore that kind of blinds you to the need for being flexible, okay, or okay, all right. Now these are external. The internal side is those whose minds are inflexible, hard, and unbending will find it difficult to see and tolerate different views or new ideas, or accept new ideas, new opinions or viewpoints, right? Okay. So the first phrase is that those who believe they know more and are more capable than others will have rigid minds. Yeah, it applies to a lot of people, mostly people who are very intellectually minded, because they learn a lot, they know a lot. So they also, you would think, right? It's kind of counterintuitive, right? That you would think that the person who learned more or knows more should be more open-minded, but sometimes that's not the case. As a matter of fact, they become what? Arrogant, because they think they know more, right? Because they know more, right? So they think, so therefore they will have more, they will tend to have a more inflexible mind, believe it or not, okay? Because they'll have, are more capable than others, will have richer minds, which will not allow them to adapt to changing, and thus they become followers of that, okay? So that's one thing we have to be mindful of, okay? All right, so the second phrase, okay, the second phrase is that, okay, on the external side, all right, here, now remember the first phrase, he's saying the big and forceful or strong, right? The big and forceful outcome. Now, what's the opposite of big and forceful? It's not small and weak, but rather gentle and pliant and flexible, right? That's what the words he used, right? Okay, all right. So this is because, why is that? This is because it's not about the external qualities, that's very important, but rather the internal qualities of an agile, gentle, flexible, and nimble mindset, like the soft and pliant qualities of a living thing, all right? So it is not so much the physical qualities of being small and agile that is important. Rather, it is the mental attitudes, concepts, ideas of being small. That's being soft, gentle, humble, that's very important. And nimble, flexible, pliant, supple, that is more important, all right? So on the more broader level is that even a large organization can be agile or nimble or adapt to changing conditions. So that's why he did not use the opposite of large as small, right? Because he says, because even a large organization or a big person or thing still can be agile or nimble in their mindset, okay, in their mind, adapt to change. Okay, as long as those in management have a soft and flexible mindset, okay, so that's why, okay, so that's why the reason why the opposite of big, okay, the big is not small. The opposite of being big is not small. It's because it is possible to practice softness and flexibility at any level of strength or size. So the opposite of big is the pliant or supple. Okay. All right. So thus, the large and powerful need not be broken up into smaller units, just as a big, tall, strong, and powerful warrior can be soft, gentle, flexible, and nimble within, okay, in their minds. But like everything else, a large and powerful organization or individual need to cultivate this ability to adapt, right? Okay, so the big and powerful warrior needs to cultivate the soft skills of courtesy and gentleness, that's the soft, right, in interactions with people that will win the admiration and respect from people. So when using the soft approach, though, one needs to recognize the role of the ego. Okay, so let's go to chapter summary 2. Sorry, what happened here? Oh, darn. Okay, I don't have part 2. Sorry. Okay. Why is this? Okay, here. Oh, something's wrong here. Sorry. Okay, I didn't do this. Okay, never mind. Let's go to part 2. Okay, part 2 is down here. Okay, so that's the soft and gentle approach. Okay, we call it a soft and gentle approach. All right. Okay, so we tend to have, okay, we have to be mindful of certain things. All right. Okay, so first is we have to recognize the role of the ego. Okay, when we're using the soft and gentle approach. Okay, so the illusion of strength. I am a strong will and I'm not easy to so that's the ego speaking. Okay, that's not really your true nature speaking. Okay, we think we are very strong will and easy. Okay, so we should ask ourselves, is this a justification for not wanting to take action and responding to change, or is it just laziness, right? So when we say, because we should understand that that's when we say that we are strong will, not easy to say, that's really our ego. Okay, so we have to ask that question. And why am I saying this? Is it because I'm lazy or I don't want to change? Okay, or ask, is there a fear beneath the surface that you fear change? Okay, that you are unsure, that you have something that you're fearful of, okay, of letting go of. Okay, all right. So and then B is to recognize that there's resistance to change. Okay, now there's a monkey. The monkey. Okay, I don't want to go into details, but the whole thing is that, because I'm running out of time. Okay, I probably need about 10, 15 minutes. But anyway, all right. Okay, so the reason why there's still monkeys exists in the world, because at one point in past history, a monkey was given the choice to become a human. Okay, they can remain a monkey or become a human. Okay, that's the story. Okay, this is this is more like a fairy tale type of story. So the monkey, the choice given to the monkey is that if he wants to become a monkey, if the monkey wants to become a human, they have to lose their tails. Okay, so the monkey was very, very hesitant of wanting to become a human, because he's saying, oh, I'm going to lose my tail. I'm not going to have a tail anymore. Okay, so so he doesn't feel comfortable, because now without the tail, I can't swing from branch to branch, tree to tree, etc. So I'm, I don't know if I want to let my tail go. Then there's also risk, because they say, hey, without the tail, I can't do a lot of things. I can't hang from a tree branch. There could be risk. It's risky. All right. And lastly, emotional attachment. The tail has always been part of me. It's been loyal to me. It's been faithful to me. So, so I want to remain faithful and loyal to it. So that's the attachment part. So I don't want to, give up my tail. So that's why the monkey's still a monkey. Okay, I mean that's the fairy tale. Okay, all right. So just understand that there's an ego. Okay, all right. That ego is always this. They always give you resistance. So we got to be careful. Okay, now what's a follower of death? Follower of death is that there's a story of an old TCM doctor and a young apprentice. I don't want to go too much details. I'll just try to make it very short. Okay, basically, there was once upon a time in ancient China, there was a very famous, well-renowned TCM Chinese, traditional Chinese medical doctor. He practices what they call ba mai. That means feeling the pulse. Okay, to feel the pulse. Okay, I don't want to get into the details of that, but he was never wrong in his diagnosis using using his technique of of feeling the pulse. Okay, he was able to correctly diagnose all ailments and everything, and none of his patients died. He had 100% perfect track record, etc. So he became very famous. So at one point in life, he's getting older. He decided to take on a young person, apprentice who's eager to learn, and taught him all the skills and how to concoct prescriptions, et cetera, to treat illnesses, learning the techniques of the feeling the pulse. Okay, these two, the old doctor and the young apprentice, over time, became very successful. And then the old doctor also noticed that, hey, it's interesting. Now, he also has signed the young apprentice to see, the patients who are not as, as sick, whose sickness or illness are not as life-threatening, are more milder or whatever, because after all, he's the young apprentice, and he'll only see the more serious. He'll treat more serious patients, okay, people who are more advanced stages of their illness. Okay, so they went on some time, and then he noticed that, hey, it seems that there are more and more patients are going to the young apprentice, than himself. Then he realized, well, that's kind of obvious, because there are usually more, people who come to see doctors are, usually ill, and generally most of them are not seriously ill. So of course, more of them, those patients will see him than him, see his young apprentice than him. But then he, that's still a nagging thought. He's still wondering, over time, wow, more and more patients are seeing his young apprentice other than him. And so he kind of felt a little uncomfortable. So one day he was having tea with one of his old friends, and his old friend, he remarked this to his old friend, and a friend said, hey, you know what? I'll go check out. Maybe because I'll go check out your young apprentice, because I myself am feeling a bit under the weather. And then before he could finish, the old doctor, jumped in and said, I knew it. I could see that right in your face. The color of your face, etc., etc. I noticed that something is not right with you. It looks like you're under the weather. And here, let me feel your pulse. And his old friend said, okay, yeah, sure. He goes, I knew it. This confirms my suspicions. You are under the weather because you have what we call 寒气, the cold energy. Okay, cold energy. So that's it. There's no need to explain. No need to. I know everything. I know what your problem is. I know I have to. This is the correct diagnosis. And so what? I'm gonna make up a concoction of herbs for you to take, and within a week you'll be 100% okay. And then he says, oh, but so a friend said, wait, but I just have some oranges this morning, and then the doctor cut it out. Said, no, that's nothing to do with this. You have the hanqi. That's right. So my doctor's right. So you just do what I tell you. And he says, but I also have some friends. But the old friend also, the friend also said, oh, but I also have some friends that I hung around with that also has no, nothing to do with them. Just follow my diagnosis to do that. Okay, because he said, oh, okay. The old friend says, but you know what? As our agreement, I'll also go to see the young doctor, and we'll to find out what why he's why so many patients go to him. So he did go see the young doctor, and the young doctor was very patient with him, asked him about how his life was, what his daily routines are, how his family is, how his friends are, a whole bunch of questions. Very patient, listened to this old friend's explanation, and that he ate oranges, that he hung out with friends, and the young doctor was very patient, very sympathetic, very understanding, and then listened to all his stories and whatnot and all the descriptions. And then he also then the doctor the young doctor took his time and felt his pulse and all that stuff, and then said and answer any questions that the old man might have, and also then finally said, okay, this is my diagnosis. Yes, you have the hanqi, you have the cold energy or whatever. Now that's not because of the oranges or whatever, your friends or whatever, but because lately, the last couple of weeks or so, it's been getting cold. So it's natural that this cold energy in this environment could infect you if you're not careful. And generally it'll infect your throat and your lungs, okay, or affect that the most. Okay, so I can make up a concoction of herbs for you to take and guarantee that within a week you should be okay. And so the old man was very happy and then left. Okay, very glad. Now, then the day later, he met up with the old doctor and explained to him what happened. Say, hey, the your young apprentice was very patient, very understanding, very empathetic, etc. etc. He listened to all my explanations, my stories. He asked me about my family, etc. All that, very good and very patient. And then he gave me this diagnosis, and blah blah blah. And then the old doctor says, "See, that's exactly what I said. Exactly what I told you, that you have this, you have the cold energy or cold qi, anyway, and all that stuff that infected you. And the same concoction that he gave you is what I gave you. So, so I'm perfectly right? And the old friend said, yes, but the reason why all the patients go to him now, or more patients go to him, to your young apprentice, is because he's very sympathetic, very empathetic, very understanding, and he's very patient, and he listens, okay, and doesn't cut me off like you did, okay. So when the old man, and so that's why so many of your patients that used to come to you now go to him, okay. So then upon hearing this, the old doctor was speechless. Now, well, what does that mean? The story is that I'm not talking to you about, that as a doctor, you should have good bedside manners, etc. No, that's not the story. The point of the story is that in life, when we're dealing with people, interacting, it's not just, your skills, the hard skills, knowledge, education, whatever, position, whatever, status. So it doesn't mean that you're incompetent or inexperienced. Actually, it may be quite the opposite, okay? That we can be inflexible, okay? Or that we can, okay? That we have to be mindful of that, you may be the most knowledgeable. You may have the best skills, but, all right? But you are a follower of death, okay? And why? Because you are so successful, so renowned, so famous, so knowledgeable that you become complacent. Okay, so therefore, when you reach that higher status, there becomes a gap between you and the ordinary people, the people that you have. So we have to be careful. So that's being the follower of death. Okay, so follower of death does not mean that you have no knowledge, you are incompetent, or you have no experience. No, it could be very well the opposite. You could be very knowledgeable, very skillful, very competent, but because that will lead to arrogance, impatience. Okay, all right, you cut people off. You're very short people because you know more, right? You know more. You're more. Okay. So what's a follower of life? A follower of life is being sympathetic. Now, that's not mean being weak. Okay. You could be a very strong warrior, powerful warrior, but if you're sympathetic, that does not mean you could be sympathetic also, right? Okay. So knowledge and techniques are just part of it, right? The hard skills. We call this, business world, they call this the hard skills, right? The hard skills. But you also need the soft skills. That's the listening, understanding, empathy, sympathy, etc., patience, etc. All right. Okay. So you need both. You need the hard skills and the soft skills. Okay. That's what. Now you should also be flexible. You should not have an either or mentality. That's the extremes, right? The two extremes. Okay. So let's go back. Sorry. Okay. Now we're near the conclusion. So the key point is this: that which is forceful and aggressive may seem to have the upper hand, but in fact occupies a lower position of disadvantage. Conversely, being yielding and flexible may be perceived as a weakness, but is in fact a great strength that occupies a higher position, leading to victory and success. On a personal level, where in order to be able to deal with matters satisfactorily, one needs to be gentle or soft and pliant or flexible, right? So these qualities occupy a higher place. Whereas if one is very rigid and forceful in dealing with matters, there will be many negative consequences where some negative circumstances will arise. Let's go to summary part 3. Okay, so let's look for it. So we should look to the past and extrapolate to the future. Okay, so being flexible is not a slogan. Can we name upchange that will affect you? Okay, so these are some questions to ask yourself, right? There could be there could be changes that's happening in society or that will affect us. So we have to be mindful of that. So what are some changes that we can look into or learn about that will give you some new ideas? Okay, so just basically we have to be on the lookout. Just, keep it in our radar. Okay. Don't ignore them. All right. Okay. All right. B, but also be mindful that the more accomplished you are, the more humble you must be, right? Like that old doctor, okay? He has to be more humble, all right? Okay, he can't be that impatient and rash and, forceful, okay? So now it can be easy when you are accomplished, when you're successful, right? It can be easy to lose touch with reality, with the everyday people. We got to be careful of that, all right? And then the challenge is to what? Remain receptive, open-minded, courteous, and patient, even when you know you are right. All right. Even though you may be right, we have to be mindful, to be receptive, to be more tolerant. Okay. So that's the idea. Okay. So that's why it's important to be soft, gentle, and flexible. The gentle approach, the soft approach. Okay. So this connects back to the first line. That's on the physical level. Okay. All right, where a living thing is soft, tender, and pliant, and flexible. While dead, it is hard and stiff. Where all living things, when alive, are soft and flexible. When dead, becomes dry and brittle. Okay, so on the non-physical side, it just means that where a mind that is gentle or soft and flexible or pliant is alive or living, because this will allow one to accept and tolerate different ideas, opinions, possibilities, views, etc. That's a positive quality. While a mind that is unyielding, hard, and rigid or stiff is like death, because it will not allow one to accept and tolerate different ideas, opinions, possibilities, views. That's a negative quality, okay? So the key is to be flexible and mindful of not being too flexible. Balance and moderation are the keys. Others may see you as weak, but underneath the appearance of weakness is massive strength, where you want to be aligned with life. So you want to manifest flexibility and suppleness, but also manage them so as not to be excessively flexible or soft, where you have no ideas, opinions, or views of your own. When you are aligned with death, it is not just being inflexible, being cut off from all possibilities. It is also being aligned with being very fragile and withered. Okay, on the internal side is that, well, those whose minds are hard and unbending are aligned with death. That's the follower of death. That's a negative quality. While those whose minds that have the ability to yield to reality are aligned with life, the follower of life. That's positive quality. Okay. So on the external internal side is that where a military that is so powerful or strong and only relies on that strength to overcome its enemies to achieve its military objectives instead of the intelligent use of its strength will not be victorious in war. This is due to its arrogance, complacency, and flexibility. Just like the inflexible army, the strong and unbending or inflexible tree also gets cut down for its hard wood. This is a metaphor for an inflexible and unbending person who is stubborn, unyielding, inflexible, unable or unwilling to adapt to change. Okay. So where being big and powerful can blind you to the need for agility, flexibility, or perceptive to changing conditions in the first place. So being big and forceful occupies a lowly position, while the internal qualities of an agile, gentle, flexible, and nimble mindset, like the soft and pliant qualities of a living thing, occupy a higher place, because the mental attitudes, concepts, or ideas of being small, that's being soft, gentle, or humble, and nimble, being flexible, pliant, or supple, of the soft approach are more important and effective. Thus, by using the soft approach in life, we too can deal with all matters in a satisfactory manner and win the trust of others. This is being soft or gentle and pliant or flexible. Okay, sorry it took a little while, but this concludes chapter 76. If I said anything wrong or incorrect, I ask for the Buddha's and Lao Tzu's forgiveness and guidance and everyone's guidance. Okay, thank you, everybody.